stories and start moving towards creating a blueprint of our functionality. And then the whole phase is sort of recursive. So then we'll build out and we'll start this whole thing over again and see how we've done. So that's kind of where we are. We're getting close to phase 2 there. So today we'll be doing stakeholder mapping, like I was saying, and we're going to be generating. This is an example of kind of what we're working on. If we were in person, we would be doing this on a whiteboard. Which presents some benefits and has some drawbacks as well. And you see we have a lot of different characters involved here, and then we're drawing their connections and kind of putting them in groups, and we're capturing their mindset, which is probably the most important part of this, or a very important part of this, in little speech bubbles. So our digital version of this, this is the screen we'll be working from today. This is a bird's eye view, and we've kind of pre-populated it with a lot of the different stakeholders that we perceive to be involved. So throughout the day, I encourage you at any point here, if you see someone who is missing, or you think of someone who is missing, by all means chime in and we'll toss them out there.
If I can interrupt, Leo, you're definitely going to have to zoom on that.
Oh yes. So this is a sky. This is a sort of a sky level view, and so we'll kind of work our way quickly through the players that we have, and then maybe we'll see if anyone thinks of anyone who's missing. So we'll start with the obvious. We have a early childhood counsel, and eventually this is where we're going to put the mindset in the little speech bubble there, and then we have the EC Connect app. And we have the QRIS and PDIS databases and their sort of relationships with the EC Connect app, right? And then relatives of the early childhood councils are the QI navigators. And we have a few others who are floating over on the sidelines that we're going to move in. We also have licensed providers, informal care providers, families and children who are directly impacted by the informal and licensed providers, but whom are indirectly impacted by the councils.
We also, there is a delay, so as you're moving around, I should give everything a half second.
Okay, great. As I said, a work in progress. This is what we're doing today is a somewhat experimental approach to stakeholder mapping. Then we have the people that we were calling sort of QI service providers, who are going to be internal coaches, external coaches, and then someplace here we've got vendors. And there's our vendor, little vendor. So we're hoping to come to kind of a shared visual consensus, a shared visual language of this ecosystem, and that's what the end product is going to be. We've sidelined, kind of sideboarded a few other roles, and that's going to be the QRIS coordinator, the PD team from CDE, the director primary contact for a provider, lead teachers who are probably also going to be through the providers. We have a council finance person. We have a assistant teacher and a grant lead. That's kind of who we have on the sideboard. So I'll be asking you in just a moment where we think we ought to place those. Can anyone think of anyone or anything we've missed? I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, so I know it's hard to read when I zoom out, but I wanted to slowly kind of move over that whole ecosystem again and see if there's anything obvious there. I also left out funders. Funders are also here.
And folks, you can chat in answers, or you can unmute yourself and just speak up. It's not that big of a group, so it's up to you.
I think professional development is left out of the vendor section, and a lot of them are. Sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
So are you saying you want one icon for maybe learning material vendors and then another icon for professional development vendors?
Or maybe just a bullet underneath that vendor, professional development.
I guess it currently just says sells educational materials. So we will say, tell me how you would like that phrased.
Perhaps sells professional development.
Yeah, great. All right.
You could also include the help desk.
Excellent.
Excellent support. Or the special appropriate councils.
I think that might be micro.
Okay.
One thing we did forget maybe is the council coordinator or executive director of the council, so maybe we could add that.
I'm going to put them in the sideboard for now, and then let's get these sideboard people integrated.
What about other early childhood groups, you know, that sort of tangent to us, but still, you know, like come to our meetings occasionally, provide support. They're not necessarily a vendor, but they're nonprofits as well.
Like a partner?
Yeah, partners.
Yeah, we could just put partners,
Mm-hmm.
ECE partners,
yeah.
Or maybe just EC partners, or these multi-domain partners. Do we envision them having a role in using EC Connect?
I don't know. They would use Color Shine, I think, but I don't know. What about school districts? Is that a partner, or is that getting too far away?
I think most of ours are like they're the directors and the they have one person that is listed as their main contact for each of the sites.
Okay.
Great. And if you think of anyone as we're going along here, we can obviously keep adding. There's no limit. Let's start kind of trying to cluster these a little bit. So I would assume that lead and assistant teacher is pretty simple. Those are going to be over in the school sector. So I'm going to slowly move them over there to our. Oh, I guess I didn't end up with a school, huh? So we're just going to call it licensed providers. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And we might even put them kind of in between the families and the school and the facilities. And that's going to be, these are going to be connected to licensed providers, not informal care providers.
In most cases.
In most cases, probably.
Does everyone on the phone understand kind of the goal of this in terms of, you know, what we're trying to get to and your participation in terms of kind of the relationship map between all the users?
Yeah.
This is Stacy. Yeah.
So it's definitely an interactive session. Good. And if anyone has...
We need to probably have a starting point of let's start here and then start building these. And then we would probably be able to identify anyone we're missing as we go.
Great.
Perfect.
Well, let's start here. We're going to start, we'll just start on the far right with families and children. I don't think that we need to add any bullet pointed notes to that unless anyone can think of anything particularly. But what their mindset is probably, this is an easy one, their mindset is probably going to be something like, you know, I want, why can I not click in the text? There we go. I want quality child care. Yeah, that's pretty simple. That's probably the simplest of all. So that's kind of what we're going for. Just simple statement, sort of, you know, summarizing the mindset of those people. So with that in mind,
I think an important part of that is not just I want quality childcare, but I want affordable quality childcare.
Absolutely.
And access to it as well. I want to have access to affordable quality childcare.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah, access is an important word there too. Okay. Well, so let's maybe try moving on to lead teacher and eventually we'll get to assistant teacher. Are there any notes? Are there any things we should know about the contextualized lead teacher? So lead, I'm going to maybe put one, which is something is that a lead teacher is someone who is going to be our direct contact. What distinguishes? Let's talk about what distinguishes a lead teacher from an assistant teacher and from the licensed care provider as a whole.
Maybe we could say something like, so I lead a classroom or classrooms in a licensed child care center.
Yeah.
So historically, we haven't done as much with lead teachers, but remember that this is also future looking. So if there were pathways or areas where we want to have additional functionality in EC Connect, having particular information for a lead teacher in EC Connect as opposed to just the director or primary contact might be something we could do. So we're thinking both of how things are now and how things might be based on roles.
So Sharon, this is Heather. I'm thinking of a lead teacher and just trying to put this into context for how they'd interact with EC Connect. I'm thinking about them possibly using it to access requests for a class observation, for competencies, because they are the identified recipient of the class for demonstrated competencies for PDIS.
Great.
So someone summarize that for me.
So they would be requesting support for a professional development assessment so that they could increase their credentialing in connection to the PDIS system. So they may interact to request support for that assessment through this portal.
But are they not going to do that through their director?
Well, I guess it depends on whether or not we're talking about giving lead teachers access, but wouldn't you have to enter them in to EC Connect to identify them as the recipient and link that to the account in Sugar so that they came up on the request as the person that's actually going to receive the service and not the director?
And so that would actually be done through the coaching log and the coaching participants module, which is something that some councils use and some councils don't use at this time. So I don't know if you would feel comfortable with this, but we're saying requesting support for a professional development assessment. Is it actually, it's actually for a coaching observation or assessment? Is that accurate still? Coaching observation or assessment?
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
Because that way we're lining it up with the language in Sugar, which where this would live would be in the coaching module, right?
Right.
So just say requesting support for coaching, observation, or assessment. And maybe we could put an asterisk because that would be a new ability. So
okay.
Lead teachers don't currently have that ability.
Great. Something else just there. We'll like a notice some point for that. All right, what is their mindset going to be? How are those? Because we want to know if you could summarize in maybe 5 words what they're thinking in regards to this tool and this kind of ecosystem.
So maybe say it another way, what's their primary interest and what are kind of where are they thinking as they're interacting with EC Connect?
What do you guys think about, I want the best materials and professional development for my classroom? How do I get the best materials and professional development for my classroom? You can say PD for professional development.
Something like that. Good.
What do you guys think? We need you to speak up.
Yeah, I think it's accurate. I think it's also important for them to know what they're supposed to do and make it easy for them to know what they're supposed to do. I think our coaches would like on EC Connect to have, you know, what they're coaching the lead teachers on doing if they're working on hand washing or whatever, that the lead teacher and the director can see what they're supposed to do in EC Connect.
So what I'm hearing is that we want coaching recommendations to be front and center for lead teachers, and we want the lead teacher to know what they're supposed to do, not only in EC Connect, but maybe in QRIS and PDIS as well?
Yes.
Yes, I think that'd be great.
Okay. So, so why don't we say, I want to know how to use ECCon, QRIS, and PDIS. That's fine. And then coaching recommendations should be for the Anything else we want to add to that?
You can't sue EC Connect.
Oh, how to do EC Connect.
No,
Please don't. They need to increase your professional liability.
All right, great.
This
So
is
then
Sherry, can you hear me?
Sure.
Yes, we can hear you.
Could this be used for access to those coaching logs in general? So,
yes.
Okay, so teachers could go and say, what was I supposed to work on? My coach is coming back next week or whatever it be. And so they could review those goals they set on the coaching log.
Correct. And in fact, that is already the case. There are coaching recommendations in Sugar or in EC Connect through the QIP dashboard. But I think what we're saying is we want a dashboard that has historical coaching records, scheduled coaching, and sort of an interactive component to that, right?
Right, right. So they have that same information readily accessible all the time.
So it's just a dashboard of historical and future coaching.
Is it possible, given the time, that we can talk about who is currently accessing Sugar, and I'm just concerned that if we jump into all this new stuff, we are going to miss getting some detail in such a short meeting for the current users.
Yeah, do you want to jump to council users?
I guess I'm concerned with an hour how far we're trying to get through this, and if we're going to schedule another meeting and in case we need to continue.
You can schedule a meeting if you want.
Well, I'm just saying we jumped to a brand new piece without going, you know, talking about our current users and what we would be doing with. So I just want to make sure we have time for what we want to accomplish.
Do you want to move to director primary contact or to the council internal staff first?
I think either one of those.
Okay, since we're on the provider side, why don't we jump to primary contact director? Assistant teacher really doesn't have a current role other than registering for training. So let's go ahead and pull over the director.
That's going to be this director primary contact.
Yep. And so who, does anyone have any thoughts about what the director can already do and what they maybe should be able to do?
Well, they're going to do their applications.
Anyone else? All right, Lisa, do you have more thoughts?
They're going to be able to see what awards, if any, they receive.
Submit orders for QI materials.
See their awards and submit orders for QI materials. Great. Other things?
Is there a timeline sort of kicks off?
There is a life cycle of quality improvement that's available on the support site that you could look at for that timeline. So are you saying but having one that's specific to the director on EC Connect?
I wonder, yeah, as a user, the user experience, if that's a tab, when they click on it, and then that's also tethered in it. Hey guys.
Great.
Timeline.
Timeline of life cycle quality improvement funds. But we probably wouldn't call it that in the user experience. But.
Yeah, maybe all things that they'd be in.
Did everyone hear that?
No.
No.
Try again, Tim.
Well, I said, so for the user experience, I was wondering if there was a timeline that sort of existed for, centers, sites, directors, where they could look and see, hey, what do I need to complete this month? Hey, what's coming up next month? And I wonder if that would be a good sort of tab to have as a user, and when they click on it, they see the next thing that they need to do or apply for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
I think they also would like the spending deadline date.
Spending deadline. So maybe just all important deadlines.
Not just deadlines, but training.
Sounds like we've got echo if somebody's not muted.
Director and primary contact, they're not always the same person.
Correct.
So is there a way to separate the two? I'm thinking large school districts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe let's make a note that directors and primary contacts are not always the same person, so they may be interested in different, particularly analytics, different analytics.
Mm-hmm. Or flow, MOU, they go to the director, which large school districts need to go to the primary contact.
Mm-hmm.
And they get lost in they get lost a lot.
Yeah.
Would you say that's the exception in terms of how often they're not the same?
No, it's just larger organizations have, like they have a director maybe that oversees multiple sites, and so they might have different primary contacts for each location, but the director is the one who might be authorized to sign in some cases. Sometimes it's the primary contact, and sometimes it's the director that's the authorized signatory for MOUs.
For directors who have multiple roles, like they're also a coach for a different council, you should also have a single login so that they can choose their role right away without having to remember beforehand, this is my role, I need to go in this. They should be met with the ability to change that option as soon as they log in with a single login.
Yep, so ability to toggle roles on logins.
Which would flip on and off access.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be for all directors, it would only be for the directors who are in dual roles.
And it works a lot like that for quality navigators, right? They log in, they can select the site that they're being the navigator on behalf of when they log in.
Yep.
Great. Do we have a quick mindset for this person? I want to
access resources for my child care center or providers for my entity. Because it could be your family home provider, your center,
Right.
And they really only have one. So for my site is usually what we say.
all right, for my site. Great.
Yep.
All right. Let's.
And they want it to be easy.
I want things to be easy. Yeah.
Which is easily accessed.
Yeah.
All right.
There's other stuff like I want to pay my staff more and like all kinds of stuff, but we
Want more money.
All right. Let's move on to what's the next important role. I assume that the director of primary contact is going to be probably somewhere maybe a little bit more in between the teachers and the providers and the people receiving care.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do something a little bit more like this maybe, because those could be involved. All right. And then eventually we will we'll connect some of these things. All right. So what's a good place to go next? Is do we want to stay in the provider sector and try to do licensed providers and formal care, or because of time, do we want to start moving towards council?
Council.
All right. Great.
Councils.
Yeah. I think that these two mindsets are too similar to the smaller people. All right. So great. So here we have council in the center. It's slowly moving its way over there. There we go. So council. What we have for council are that they facilitate efforts to connect players, that they are distributed spatially by county, sometimes counties, and then different levels of QI engagement. Those are just things I have from my previous meeting notes. What are some? Should I remove any of those? Should I change any of those? Any feedback on those?
Maybe work towards elements in the EC framework. So it's not just QI.
And I would have like county/region maybe.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's get a one-liner for their mindset.
Less complicated.
Want
that right,
support
guys?
for children.
Support for children, I think that's what you said.
I think they want to spend most of their time doing their work and not recording doing their work. So, you know, I think that falls under less complicated, but just a little more detail there. They don't want to duplicate efforts because I think, you know, some of what's going in Sugar is also in other places in their council.
Yep, absolutely. Great.
And we'll get more information on that through the observations and interviews process, so we don't have to go into detail on that right now, but that will be addressed.
Just to clarify, does more support for children or is it more time?
From the council perspective, I want support.
We're getting some echo. If anyone has their speaker on in addition to the phone, please mute that.
I'm wondering if that would be that what we do benefits children and families.
Instead of more support for children?
Yeah, or maybe as a way to expand on that, that what our work, the goal of our work is to provide better support, education, things that for children and families.
So that better.
Would it be more accurate to say that we're providing, basically we're helping the helpers, right? So we're helping the people who help children and families, because we don't, many councils don't directly work with families and children, but some councils do. So would it be accurate to say help the helpers for families and children?
It's kind of that systems words, but I don't know if you want to use the word, you know, strengthening those systems around children and families.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Great. So let's move on to another stakeholder if possible. Do we want to do? I heard grant lead.
How to get to the grants management.
No. Let's see. Bear with me while I go grab them.
While he's grabbing them, what do you guys think the grant lead is primarily doing related to EC Connect? Program management, maybe? They manage the quality improvement program?
Yep.
Facilitate outreach? Those kinds of things.
Well, and that's where it's going to get a little hard, because I think sometimes it depends on the council. Because I'm the grant lead for my council, but my QIN is the one facilitating outreach, so it may vary.
Well, is it true that the QIN is performing the outreach, but that the grant lead is planning the outreach, or is the navigator really doing both planning and performing?
So the grant lead is perhaps overseeing the implementation of the goals of the grant.
Yeah, the scope of work.
Yeah, so maybe oversees scope of work and deliverables.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stays in the rail.
Say that again?
I said stays in the rails of the grant.
That's what I thought you said.
Kind of liven it up a little bit.
You know?
Okay.
So are the grant leads also identifying the goals?
Goals and reporting requirements, maybe?
So in essence, they would be designing the evaluation as well, or would that come from, you know, a higher top, I guess?
It depends on the funding stream, I think.
Okay. Yeah. And so maybe one thing that I've come across is there's a difference between urban needs and rural needs. And so maybe if there were ways to micro-tailor some of, you know, I was looking at early childhood councils, you know, that's also an urban versus rural. There could be some big differences, but also a lot of crossover. I don't know if there are templates out there that would help guide the rural councils and sort of their, you know, avenues and, you know, urban ones as well. It's just something I've heard a lot that's a concern. When doing, you know, big data tracking or entry, there isn't always the number of staff or support. I was just going to check.
Mm-hmm. But I think that this role could be, for many councils, the grant lead could play multiple roles. The grant lead might also be, you know, the executive director and the quality improvement navigator.
Right, and so I think what we're trying to do, you know, as we've talked about this for the past couple of years, we think about things like hats. Like many people wear more than one hat, roles are the same. So in a database like this, we can do permission-based roles where you have access. If you are the grant lead, the coach, and the navigator, you have access to all three of those important functions within EC Connect. So what we're trying to do is kind of isolate, though. If we are saying this is the grant lead role, it is always the same because it's the database grant lead. And you might be the grant lead, and you might be the QI navigator, and you might be the coach, but from a database definition standpoint, we need grant lead to mean the same thing for everybody, right? It doesn't mean that your title is different or the way you do your job is different. It just means that we need to define what the grant lead role is in the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think really my point is just keeping in mind that it could be the same person, so it could be multiple steps for the same person, even though I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's been a real core problem, right, is that if somebody's got more than one role and we have workflows built to have 3 roles helping with one task, then they have to do 3 steps even though they're one person. So that's certainly something we will want to dig into and see if there are ways to kind of consolidate those steps through EC Connect.
I wonder if they're also the data analyst. Data.
Councils aren't fortunate enough to have those.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Yeah.
But like I think financials, sometimes they are the data analysts.
All right, let's see if we can have a quick mindset. I want to
fulfill the scope of work for my grant.
Right. I'll take that as no objection. Great. So then, does it make sense to move to QI Navigator, or is there another player that we want to hit more importantly? Let's prioritize our players.
We probably have time for 1 or 2 more things. Do you want to do relationships, or do you want to keep doing
Yeah, because some people will have to leave. At the scheduled time was till 11:30.
Okay.
So some people will have to leave, but we want to, let them know what's going to happen next too.
Great. Well, should I go ahead and do that, and then we can just keep going?
Mm-hmm. That sounds good.
Okay. So what's next is that we're gonna flesh out this whole flow chart diagram, and we will make sure that we will share it with everyone. Everything that we do along the way, we want to be, transparent and open about, and so you can expect to see that coming sometime soon. And we're going to move from here into trying to find tangible humans, real humans who fill these roles that we can interview and talk to and sort of get an idea of what their experiences are, both with EC Connect and what are areas that are not currently covered that EC Connect could do and could do better. Those sorts of things.
Yeah, and maybe from an ECHLA standpoint, what we were hoping to cover, even though we only have 3 minutes, is kind of if you have some ideas, we're basically breaking into 2 tours. One will be a Metro Denver area tour that can happen more quickly, and then the other would be a Greater Colorado tour that would hit a few folks out in the greater part of Colorado in April. And so the first tour would be very specific around observation and interviewing of current and what future needs are. And there could be some phone interviews that happen in March so that we pull in the more rural councils as well. And then the second tour is really going to be responding to some initial wireframes of kind of the new layout and what we're thinking will work well. And then there will be some additional phases. But are there some councils that come to mind that would be willing to host observations and interviews, or participate in a GoToMeeting phone call where these guys can kind of watch how you use the system and what stumbling blocks you come across and like the 3 things that you really wish would be different that aren't, and things like that. So are there some councils that come to mind, or if you are, somebody who'd be willing to be observed, maybe we can just have that conversation real quick.
Larimer would be interested.
Great. So we've got Larimer and XHAC. And would you be interested in all the roles or just specific roles for observations? So can we observe coaches, navigators, grant leads, council coordinators, financial people? Just maybe type into the chat box what you'd be willing to have us observe or interview folks. And then we can follow up more specifically with you.
You're typing.
And I don't know, from ECLA's perspective, are you wanting to send out a more full announcement to all councils?
Yeah, we can. We'd definitely send out.
An
we only have a
invitation.
small number of the councils here.
Great. Keep going a few more minutes, and people can just duck out if they need to.
Yeah, so just type in anything that you're willing to do, and we're going to keep going. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sure. Hey guys, this is Sherry. I have to go, but keep me in the loop.
Thanks, Sherry.
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Who was it? Someone from the sideboard that we were going to pull in here.
Let's see. Oh, I think we're going to do QI Navigator.
Okay, great. QI Navigator it is. So I have aware of funding streams, aware of QIS, helps align providers with funders QIS. So.
And QIS, I think you're using a quality improvement standard, which is not, surprisingly, it's not an abbreviation we use at this time. So is there something else that we want to say there instead? People on the phone? So, like, I think what that's talking about is, like, qualified quality improvement purchases,
yeah.
Which is a lot to
say. What about qualified purchases?
Qualified purchases? Purchase rules, qualified purchase rules.
Yeah. Purchase rules.
Ours are different.
Your coaches do all your purchases.
Our coaches and grant managers are in charge of making sure it's qualified.
Okay. So what are your navigators responsible for?
More of the support to our level ones. And
great. Let's put that in here, level 1 support. Technical assistance, kind of, documentation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's QRIS, technical assistance. Do they do PDIS technical assistance?
Yes.
Technical assistance for QRIS and PDIS.
And Easy Connect.
And Easy Connect, yeah. And so from we want to set permissions so that they're not restrictive. So navigators will have access to all the spending stuff, but coaches do also. So right. you would be able to work that.
Correct. Cool. Great.
Oh, outreach and recruitment.
And recording of that.
And recording of that.
Mm-hmm. And also,
I like the way we record outreach right now. Go ahead.
And also the back entering of invoices and making sure orders have been placed and that that they have been delivered.
Question about that. Are they just back entering because they accidentally didn't order through EC Connect, or are they just not ordering through EC Connect because for some reason that's not the preferred method?
For us, we're back entering when it is when it's a weird order for some reason.
I would say that back entering of weird invoices because it's not the typical process. The typical process would be you create the order through EC Connect, and then it will order with the vendors.
Is that in there? The regular process? That just
sort of aware of qualified purchase rules and assist with purchasing.
But there's a fairly good amount of invoices throughout the fiscal year that need to be back entered, and it's a time-consuming process.
Wow. Okay, we should dig into that more during the observation phase. Because back entry should hopefully be used rarely.
Even if it's a Walmart.
Even if it's a Walmart. Great.
Can I ask a clarification on the level 1 support?
Sandy, you mentioned level 1 support. How does your council do that?
That is how they went out and helped with Colorado Shine and the Great to the Top money, we used our navigators to go out and help decide to where a level 1 get the documentation and whatnot to get to level 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Our council does the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we go forward, it's sounding like from the QIRFA, level 1 support is not included in that QI, and so it sounds like maybe they're using R&R funds for level 1 support, or we might need to try and get foundation dollars for level 1 support. So in which case, you know, it's possible QI navigators might be working in a lot of other funding sources than what they're used to right now.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because our navigators work to support all levels in Colorado Shine, so not just level 1, but.
Oh, ours do too.
Yeah, they do. It's just that's the bulk of what they do.
So maybe you say level 1 support and higher level support as needed or something.
Right. I don't know. Because our coaches are out with our level 2 through 5 more than the ones.
Yeah, we don't have QI coaches per se. We have content-specific coaches. So our QI navigators do the bulk of work with programs that need technical assistance for any level when it comes to like accessing the database, ordering materials, uploading documents. They're really responsible for the flow of work, and our coaches are responsible for content coaching. So I think that is another one where it depends on the council structure.
Yeah. Would you say that the QI navigator is kind of the primary contact for sites, or do you feel like the coaches? Like how do you guys think of that?
I would say it depends on the size of the council. I mean, there's only, for us, Sharon, at ECC, there's me and there's the navigator, and the navigator supervises our contract coaches because we don't have internal coaches. So if a program needs a point of contact, it's the navigator's, she's accountable to each MOU because she's the employee at the council. The coach is not the person that manages the workflow for any of our MOUs.
Yeah, I think that's pretty universal, that the navigator is generally that main point of contact, or no? No? Coach is the main point of contact?
But we have internal coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that really is council dependent.
Well, in the way the QI base budget looks for the upcoming applications, they're not including internal or external coaches in the base budget. So, you know, I don't know what that's going to look like for all councils, but for us, that really does set kind of the expectation that it would be tough for us to keep an internal coach on staff.
Right, and I think that's something that we're all going to navigate together, where we're really going to need to advocate for being able to maintain our coach staff. This is unrelated to EC Connect, but the coaching staff is a critical element of our team, and to say that we don't have the predictability of being able to support our internal coaches is very challenging. So I know I've personally talked with OEC about that. I think we all are advocating in different ways.
Yeah, and Backpack is looking at that without Race to the Top funds, that we don't have a need for a full-time quality improvement navigator, and perhaps that role is something our coaches can take over some of.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like maybe what we should write in the bullet is that there's some differences among councils on who the primary contact is, if it's the navigator or the coach. But what's good is that in the existing system, navigators and coaches really have the same level of access to their programs and what the programs can do in EC Connect. So it's actually, it really can be either or. So that's, you know, I think we just continue the design so that it really can be either or.
So Sharon, with that in mind, is it better for us to have a role listed here as a primary contact, regardless of what their title is and what primary contacts are doing, versus us individualizing all these different titles that people might have? list that it might be the navigator, it might be the coach, it might be the grant coordinator.
Well, like, here's a good example of something that I think, I've talked to the state a little bit about, and, Emily's on the line too, so maybe she can add her insight. But, you might have a coach who really, 20% of her time is really quality navigation because she's serving as the primary contact, and that allows you to put her into your base budget, right? And so even though her title is coach, maybe there's 0.2 FTE that's included in the base budget that really is that navigator role. So I think if we just draw the line in the sand and say the navigator role means you are the primary contact, and navigators we know can be included in the base budget, and so then councils just need to decide what percentage of people's time is related to navigation versus related to direct service coaching. What do you guys think about that? Agreed.
Well, or we definitely need that clarity from the state on when they're talking about what's going to be in the GAE, more specifically what that means. Is that just site-specific work? Because that would help us also in determining the other side, the flip side of what you're talking about, Sharon.
Right, the 0.8. Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't rolled that out yet as far as I know.
Yeah.
Well, and we kind of prioritize our access to training around sugar based on who's going to spend the most time in the system. And locally, our QI navigator spends the most time in the sugar system.
That's true for us as well.
Hey guys, this is Emily, and I can't really speak to the funding piece at this point, but I wanted to get back to how sugar in general. I was actually talking with about it today, and if we could come up with core standard functions, and that this is what this means, and you may not call it that in your council, but this is that role, I really think it would simplify a lot potentially for what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go.
That's exactly what we're thinking and trying to do, even within this document, but more formally in shared definitions that really don't depend on someone's title, right? It really is dependent on what are you trying to do within the system or for the grant. And so where is that accessed and how is that done?
Yeah, and then figuring out who from the council is the person responsible for it. That's a council by council decision. But I really, because I was just thinking this morning, and one of the things when I think about sugar is really if we could clearly define, like, what are the, 3 things or 5 things that we need to use sugar for and have it be done really, really well and to fidelity, and then how do we train and support people to those functions. And I think when you can think about it as functions and or roles. So just thinking about that. And I hate to bring something up and not have a proposed solution for it or those 3 or 5 things. But I've just been thinking a lot about what can we totally standardize. And
yeah, and I think this is the perfect time to bring that up because this discovery phase is really going to help us determine those universal functions that need to happen across all councils and what are they called and how are they defined, and having that be informed by everyone, but that we have lines in the sand so it's not based on interpretation. It's based on what we have defined as a group.
So one of the things that we're doing, though, is we maybe should have considered talking about all the things that, say, councils do in sugar and listed those out first instead of going to it by roles first.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would have helped us actually get to the definition of what those things mean, where...
Yeah, I think one thing, too, though, to remember, and I didn't say this at the beginning, is that we're really trying not only to root this process and this evolution of EC Connect not in the current tool, but in what the ideal workflows. So even within the realm of Sugar and the other databases, we're trying to not think about things in terms of the existing workflows as much as what workflows would be ideal, because we want to shoot for that that to be the outcome as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, you know, we have a document that we shared with Open Media Foundation that lists out the core functions that are already in EC Connect and should be in the future in EC Connect. And so why don't we, Rick and I can take a look at that and refine it for the Sugar Advisory Group, and we can send it out to everyone, because that really defines the areas. You know, spending needs to happen in Sugar. Coaching logs need to happen in Sugar. You know, like these kinds of concrete things, and then maybe from there we can map what roles are interacting with those core functions, and kind of put that all in one place. Does that sound helpful?
That sounds more like the direction I was thinking.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's where we're going to stay more clean on what those things mean.
Yeah, so I think we can still collect the user stories side of it. Are people available until noon? I know we're already 15 minutes over, so how is everybody?
I'm yours, you guys.
Wow.
I'm good till noon.
Okay, so are we okay with kind of finishing out the mapping process, and then we'll continue to refine the map, you know, as we put together this other document and collect some additional feedback?
Mm-hmm. And this is really meant to just be an overview. This isn't the end-all, be-all of network diagrams. So, yeah, so we're just trying to get a sense of how things are pulled apart. Great, so can we do a really quick one-liner mindset for the navigator?
What do you guys think?
Still at?
I need to know everything.
I need to know everything. I think they truly care about their providers. Like, they have kind of a caseload of providers, and they really, like, everything is centered around what do I need to do for my providers. I don't know if that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're out there in every provider.
Yeah.
I need to know everything for my provider.
Yeah.
Well, and they're our go-to people on how to use the system.
Yep.
We say that they need to be the expert for our providers.
So they're the go-to and the expert for providers.
Yeah.
All right. That's great.
Are they also the ones that approve QI spending?
Usually that's the grant
from a provider. Okay.
The navigator is kind of the first filter, you know, and then the grant lead actually pre-approves.
ECPAC, it's the QI navigator and the quality improvement coach, both.
The grant lead approves QI expenditures, or?
Not always.
Yeah, so it could be the grant lead or it could be the coach.
It depends on the structure of the council.
And there are options right now in Sugar for either of those.
They might also, I wonder, be like the 211 resource. You know, like just
R&R.
QI navigators, to be that accounted for somehow, like extra.
I think that's all being centralized through Mile High United Way, right? 211.
No.
But like they would put those centers in contact with.
Not ours, but that's
okay.
Ours would be needs for something else. So.
Okay.
Great. Well, can we move on to a different role here? Would we like to go? We have several more on the sideline over here we need to plug in.
What do you guys think about coaches? It might be nice to hit coaches.
Internal and external coaches, which one would you prefer?
Do we have to keep the internal external coach
Well, they are actually different things. I know that the state really wants to get rid of that distinction, which may be possible if we only track in hours for all coaching. So maybe we need to talk about that. for coaching, external coaches are tracked in hours and dollars because they're contracted amounts that we pay our contractors for. Internal coaches are worked in, or were traditionally worked into personnel budgets on grants, which is also going to look different next year and may be more associated with dollars. So if we were to combine internal and external coaching, we'd have to pick, are we tracking coaching in hours and dollars or just in hours? And what are the issues we're going to run into by doing that?
Sounds like a good conversation.
I agree, and I feel like I feel like it's not one that we can have right here. I think it needs to be a bigger conversation. And so the reason I bring it up in this moment is I think the one thing both those need from our perspective, from what I can tell, is hours, right? I mean, and I think, so being able to track those coaching hours is really important. So that's,
and
that
so,
needs to be really easy.
So part of this is the need of the councils, because the reason that it seems to me that the dollars are tracked for, and in particular with external coaches, is because of I think initially councils needing to have that information readily available to know where they were expense-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so doing that in sugar may be really easy then for councils who do that. And I don't know what the mix is of how many of us use one type versus the other type versus the mix to know, how big of an issue this becomes.
About half of councils use contracted coaches, and about half of that half use both external and internal.
So here's something to think about, you guys, that, you know, it goes back to actually what I think it was Leo at the beginning was saying around the open foundation. And I go back to the fundamental purpose of sugar, and I think on one hand we have a system that I'm wondering from a council perspective, across councils, do they see sugar as a database that they are simply responsible for entering data into? Or is it more than that, just that database because the state tells us to do that? Or, which I think it was designed to be more than that, to be a tool to help inform strategy, capacity, cost, all of those things. And then so the reason I bring that up is if it's primarily seen as this is a database that we have to do and we're just punching in numbers to punch in numbers, that's a different user interface than this is a database that is going to be used to inform our strategy, capacity, manage all of our grants outside of the ones that the OECs, you know, like what it was originally kind of set up, and when it was designed, that was the intention of the design. So I'm not sure how to get, I mean, I don't know, I have anecdote or, you know, from sitting at my office on Sherman, but I wouldn't be comfortable saying most councils see it as this way or that way. And I would think it's like everything, it's a blend. But I think if we get to the fundamental piece of, you know, how do people view the tool, right? It's a tool in our way to track and do reporting. I think that might also help this.
I think that's an incredible thing to pursue through these interviews and observations. So I would say once again that I would like to tilt it towards how could they use it, how would they like to use it, what goals would, maybe they're concerned, maybe they just think, boy, this is just something I want to punch numbers into, and that's all I want to have, and that's the only involvement I want to have in it. And if that's the case, that's fine, and we tailor our interface for that activity. If the answer is both, which I hope it is, then that opens up a whole other can of worms of how could we build it to accomplish both goals.
Well, and I think also, this is my biased opinion, Sharon at DCC, but the intention is, and the modern way of thinking about data entry is that you have business processes that are developed within the system, and that just merely by going about your regular business process, you are recording the data. So it is not about data entry. It's about doing the activities that you are supposed to be doing, and then by virtue of doing that, you are recording the data. So I think that there is a culture shift that has happened over the last decade in nonprofits or in government grants and government grant recipients, where there necessarily needs to be a shift in thinking. We are not just punching in numbers. We are doing our work, and we're appropriately recording that in a way that's meaningful from an evaluation standpoint. So not only is there business process, but we also need the evaluation pieces to be stronger, so that at the end of the day, when I'm a coach and I've entered all my coaching logs, I have some analytics that actually are meaningful to me to look at. So I've got something to show for the fact that I just entered my coaching log, because now I can see cumulatively what the impact of that coaching is on this site or on my many sites.
Absolutely, Sharon, and that's where I'm hoping that through this interface refresh, we can get there, because I'm still hearing anecdotally stories of, oh, here's the one person in our office who enters the coaching log. Right? And so that's not the intended or the expected use, or frankly the best use of everybody's time. And so I think part of it is, I do think it's a chicken egg thing, right? If the interface works really well and is user friendly, we can get it as, yes, you're doing this as part of your, you need to do it anyway, right? You need to do a coaching log anyway as a coach, regardless of whether it's in Sugar, in a notebook, on a laptop, So how can we make that the easiest thing for you to do?
And embedded into the process, yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So I thank you guys for listening to my thoughts.
I think
and how do we create that culture shift? Go ahead, Lisa.
I think one of the challenges that we have is we have a council who has a lot, the depth of the experience of using Sugar a lot longer than the rest of us. The other thing, and so there's lots of councils who are not at that place. And I know for myself, with our coaches, their issue has always been they do not want the electronic device in between them and the person for which they're trying to have a relationship, because that's coaching is about having those relationships and working through that process. And it is that balance of then how can we get them to use something like that in a way where it's not duplicative to inform practice. So I think the depth of what we're trying to capture in Sugar related to that is possibly one of those other questions. And then how can they see value coming out of Sugar for the information that they are putting in it? Because other than tracking hours and perhaps seeing some things on the screen in EC Connect, I don't know that I can even say that I see a lot of value coming out of it myself, and that's sad because I'm really a data-loving person.
Yeah, so maybe we can explore that a little bit more. I mean, how could you, what differences in the outputs of the system would cause it to be more meaningful to you? Or maybe there needs to be a change in what's input into
and meaningful to the coaches in particular, because they're the ones, in our case, putting the data in. So if they're only going to put in what they're feeling is valuable to come back out of it, and right now it's numbers.
Right. So what else could it be? Or maybe this is in the interview and observation part.
Yeah, I think that would probably be great to get into. I'd love
yeah,
that.
because I think once we get that, we'll get some enthusiasm about training and exploring how to do it to fidelity, right? Because there's a buy-in there. Yeah. Especially because it has been a difficult couple years for some folks around learning and doing it and all that, and so getting it to that meaningful place. And Sharon, I'm really intrigued, I know we're running out of time, about the, you know, you were talking about analytics coming out and getting excited about data. I think people see data sometimes as like, oh, they're just tracking to see how I'm doing, right? And not like I try to, and for example, in my monthly check-in calls with councils, really celebrate council work where they're at, right? And knowing that there's that story behind the data. And I think being able, if Sugar is able to capture the data, but also the story, right? And to Lisa's point, it's meaningful to the coaches, it's meaningful to the providers. It provides continuity if a coach goes on maternity leave or something, right? They can go to this place and see where, you know, so that they can continue that support. I think that's what we're talking about. Getting excited about it.
What if, like, you know, somebody achieves a level 5 and the first time that coach logs into the EC Connect, then a thing pops up that says, wow, you know, so-and-so achieved a level 5 and they received X number of hours from you. Great job. Or, you know, like stuff like that. We try to do that with our coaches.
Totally. Totally.
We do that, you know, not in the system, but, you know, that's an important thing to celebrate, right? And so maybe we can kind of even have Sugar be the one, or EC Connect being the one kind of saying like, wow, you did a great job, instead of, you know, having to rely on people happening to know that somebody got a level 5, you know, and that the coach was really involved or whatever. So there are things like that that we can do that actually are not very hard, but we just have to think through what we really want to do with that.
Well, I think probably the upcoming next steps is we'll probably schedule a time to finish this and get it to some kind of a solid place, and then we will publish that and share that. Then soon you'll be receiving information about setting up interviews and getting those scheduled.
So Rick, we normally only schedule every 2 weeks. Do we want to try and ask people if they're available next Friday to finish this exercise, and we can fill it out a little bit more?
We have only about 4, let's see, 1, 2. Yeah, we can certainly ask the people on the call. I actually won't be here next Friday, but that's okay. But yeah, we could schedule another call if people want to work on this. What do you guys feel like on the call that are left? Could you do next Friday at the same time?
I cannot. It's Lisa.
Okay.
It's Emily. I can do whatever y'all need. I just have to leave by 4 to pick up little man.
I'm available.
Sharon said she can. Sharon P. said she can. Who is that? That just said yes. Was that Heather?
Oh, it's Heather. Yeah,
okay.
I can.
So maybe we'll send out another invite to everyone, a meeting invite, so that you know, you can have that on your calendars, and we'll just plan on finishing that. In the meantime, we'll fill it out a little bit more so that you have a little bit more to just respond to, and we can kind of move it forward. We'll also work on that Excel spreadsheet that has the core functions that will be in EC Connect, and maybe we can fill in what role or roles could be performing those functions.
Okay, I have to end us with a joke. If you've been reading the chat, you know the answer. But what did one eye say to the other?
Between you and me, something smells.
Yes.
If I can read your answer.
All right.
Well, thank you, everyone, and definitely thank you for the extra half hour.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Well, thanks, you guys.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for